Welcome, everybody, to another episode of The Nightstand. I am your host. If I could, I would, but I won't. Byron Anthos.
And I'm your host, Zelda. Yeah, I can't follow that.
And you shouldn't try. Y'all may not know this. I don't tell her what I'm going to say. So I might just be trying to make her laugh and just lose a little bit of control on this. She is a control freak. That's what makes it fun.
We have safe words for reasons.
My safe word is free healthcare.
And
Uh,
that's negating the need for a safe word.
how's your week?
It has been a long week. The fight for summer rages on.
I love it. She says it's a long week. It's Wednesday right now, just so you guys know.
Some people didn't even get to Wednesday, so it can be long if I want it to be.
That's fair. That's fair. And a little, it's like equal parts morbid and yet somehow optimistic.
There's my intro. Hi, I'm equal parts morbid and optimistic. I'm your co-host, Zelda.
I love you so much. You know what? You are absolutely my single best friend in the entire world. I know that like some of my other best friends are listening, but like they get it because you've been my friend for 18 years, and which kind of like speaks to our topic today. We're talking about community, finding your community.
How do you find your people? And when do you know if you, oh my gosh, just became best friends?
And is there a difference? I feel like there's a difference.
I think so. We were talking about this before we started recording. My definition would be community, like minded people you could mingle in and out of, a lot like me in high school. I wasn't really a part of any one tribe, but I could float between both of them. Kind of like Sweden. I was neutral, but I'd still take your money. And then there's friends, which I think veers more into the territory of someone that you choose to go and do activities with.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned neutrality because I actually had a conversation with somebody. They made a post where they said, "How do you help somebody without being labeled a helper?" And they were talking about like trying to stay neutral. And I just told them I was like, "Well, in a lot of cases, neutrality actually invariably is going to benefit one side over the other."
Yeah, like
There's no,
Switzerland, the
yeah,
one that's actually neutral and not Sweden.
yeah. There's like, way to get it. Why don't you know this better?
Correct my own history.
But I mean that's true. You know, neutral is there's no such thing as a true neutral because there's just a mind your business, which is really just deniability. But like not getting involved in certain things, like there are levels to it. But we're not talking about that. We can talk about neutrality some other time. That was a long one. But for community, you know, a lot of people will go like very physical with it. They'll think that it's where you live, like you know, live with a group of people or in an area having a particular character. But it's like the particular characteristic of commonality. Because there's also like the scientific community, the entertainment community, the God bless them, the red pill community. Um,
Somebody has to.
I mean that
Not my
sarcastically.
God. But like I get what you mean, like the enclaves, the barrios, the little places where you can go and know that pardon the Cheers reference, everyone knows your name and
Yeah.
there's a little bit of a similarity between the tie that binds you all together. I think I have a good example, anecdote from work. So
Yay.
we had an event at my place of employment, and it's a mixer, not my term. I know those normally involve alcohol, but this is what the people I asked when I was planning this, what they wanted, and
She's talking to you luscious out
generational
there.
thing. Yeah. It was a generational thing. That word just kept coming up. So we had someone who got there a little early, and they have a mobility apparatus, like a little cool, spiffy, compact hover round. And rather than moving one of the chairs from the existing tables, which had edges with no chairs because I'm very ADA friendly, they chose to sit at a table by themselves. So they were a part of the community still because other people came and sat with them. They just weren't up close and personal with everyone or participating in the same table conversations as everyone else. So I think to me that sounded like a good instance of okay, you're part of a community, but you are also are not friends with people. When other people came in, you're like, oh, yeah, you so and so. I haven't seen you in a while. And then they start catching up. I think that's more of the difference. You can be a part of one, and the other one is optional. And it could go back and forth between friend or community.
Yeah, like I would say you and I are friends, but I don't think we have we have a couple of shared commonalities, but not necessarily a community. Um, because there are uh, usually when people decide to invest time in a community of their finding or of their choosing, it's because they pick something that kind of prioritizes other things that they want the commonality for. I posted on our um, the description of this episode that some people will pick like their religions that they grew up with or have converted to. They'll do hobbies. They will do social causes. Like you could say that just because of a commonality, I'm a member of the LGBTQ community, but we also know that within a lot of these communities, there's also a lot of divisiveness too. So for me, I don't particularly felt that I have been part of a community that I guess I consented to, but but you know what I mean. It's like I feel like they were more identifiers than they were commonalities.
Oh, I like that an identifier because through my
I've
own
adopted identifier as opposed to labels, and that seems to make conversations flow a lot easier.
I appreciate that too because it takes some of the tribalism out of the word
Mm-hmm.
community because some communities you can move fluidly between and some communities you're just going to be a part of. Like,
Yeah,
I am a black person. I can't not be in that community, whether I want to or identify that way or not. There's just a certain way that people are going to associate me. But also, I identify as queer or questioning, closer to bisexual, and like we can go to a club together, but your community and my community are going to be different communities. Um,
absolutely, and especially when you consider the fact that the commonalities can be kind of thrust upon you. That's why I kind of made the joke about being a part of a community consensually, but it's also what I feel is the trade-off for the community is not only are there moments where you represent a community, but a community also represents you.
yeah, I think there can be sometimes also where community I find is more for people who may want a sense of belonging.
Hmm.
Like some people want to be a part of something greater than themselves.
Yeah.
Not any particular one, but religion could be thrown in there, or even people that
Hold on, I lost you. I did. Everything just kind of stopped. No, I know. Hold on. Everything stopped. Say things.
kick me out. What happened there? It says voice connected.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Sorry for that, guys. Little technical difficulties. They happen live, and we don't have a producer yet. Leave us alone.
That's a community.
That is a community. We are going to get a producer shortly, so that's exciting. So somebody who can actually run this while we talk.
Yeah, yeah, because I have a habit of talking and saying something really awesome that I don't remember as soon as it leaves my face.
Yeah.
So, community, sense of belonging. Some people, any religion will identify that way. Unions, people who do a same job. Union is a bit of a dirty word in our red state. So, that could be something that if you go across the border, yay, bully for you. You stay here, not so much. But I think that speaks to how does one find your people?
I mean, I think the first thing you have to do is decide what, like I just said, the commonality that takes priority. It's what do you feel you want to prioritize your time, your attention, and allow for a social environment of the commonality. That's why a lot of people will do. I mean, we just talked about religion. Religion's kind of an easy one because you have the institutions for it, on every corner. We're in a red state. Um,
Yeah.
but like it's true. There's churches, there's mosques, there's synagogues, but there's places that you can go that just by walking in, you've already kind of established a common ground with everybody that's there. You can do this with a lot of hobbies. There are a lot of adult intramural sports. There's painting with a twist. Like there's a lot of different hobbies and worlds within worlds that you could find it. You just have to find out. I think it benefits to what you want out of it because you can just have a hobby and not be part of a community of it.
Yeah, you could be that person that sees the flyer in the comic book shop for like a tabletop D&D night and just go and watch from the walls. There's also other places where you could do that legally. Um, but it's your level of participation is a little bit more variable when you're in a community, some communities versus a friendship. um, I think there's value to both of them. One thing that I saw or I heard recently is that people are using clinical language to break up with their friends. I saw this somewhere online, but it was like someone told their friend, like they broke up with their friend in a text message and basically said something to the effect of, I don't think I can give you what it is that you're looking for in this friendship. And so it's not healthy for either one of us to not have our needs met. And so they're like, let's just not be friends anymore. It was interesting, like the clinical breakup aspect of it, but it also felt clinical in the analyzation of what that relationship was. So I think one thing that makes it hard, although humans are community animals, we value friendship and having people around us and people to share stuff with,
Yeah.
is how do you know when you've made a friend? It's so much harder as an adult.
Okay, so
You know?
I have one for this, and it can be from finding it could come from the community, can come from without the community, but it's where the commonality isn't the defining factor. It's where you let them into most, if not all, aspects of your life. Like, because that's the difference. Because like, let's take religion is an easy one just because of the dynamics of it. But let's take the dynamics of religion. You have people that will just see each other every Sunday, and then within that group, you might have three or four that will see each other throughout the week voluntarily. They'll have dinner. They'll go to movies. They'll let their kids do a thing. That's the friendship outside of the community.
I have a friend who purposely doesn't do a lot of things with people that they work with, but they have
Mm-hmm.
had this long-standing game group of people that go and do like bar trivia, or they'll have game nights at their house and they don't talk about work. So it's kind of interesting that although these people have met for, I think they said 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
they really don't know a lot about each other outside of the sphere and scope of activities that they do, which I think is interesting. It's like you can spend 5 years with people and still have them be a stranger to a certain point. Like they were mentioning that some of these people, they don't even know their last names,
Yeah.
but they know major events happening in their lives. And they just make it a point to not talk about what they do outside. I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that for the people that tend to compartmentalize like that, that there might be a combination of not wanting to commit to a very intimate friendship, but and so you and I are guilty of this, of overworking. So we tend to like fill our schedule with other little mini communities that we could be a part of, but still not be quite as vulnerable.
Like a podcast.
Drag me. Um, That's true. One of my favorite things is like some people don't need a podcast; they need therapy, and there's something to be said about that. But I really just want to talk. Like
Yeah, I think
I'm not
also,
working out personal demons on this show. I'm just willing to talk and share perspective.
yeah, I think that some people, or I find myself in this problem sometimes. I'm a person that has a tendency to stay at a job for a while.
Hmm.
And when you see the same people for 40 plus hours a week, you're already seeing them more than your spouse, your significant
Hmm.
other, your colleague. And so naturally you start to bond over things.
I lost you again.
Oh no. Didn't do anything differently. It's gonna be real funny if it's
Yes,
all
I
mixed
got
into
you.
the final cut. Can you hear me now?
Sorry, guys. This
Okay.
is going
All
to be
right.
a very
Sorry
vulnerable
again.
episode. You guys are going to catch all of our stuff that goes wrong. Thank you.
We're learning. If you want to give us timestamps, that might be helpful.
You know what?
Um,
We're mad gonna look back on our first season with such disappointment in ourselves and it's gonna be from this episode. If we don't win an Emmy this season, it's from this episode.
it's gonna be like the first season of RuPaul's Drag Race on Logo, and you're like, ugh,
No,
they didn't even have
you
HD.
should
Who
see the camera
hired
filter
these
we have
people?
now.
There's none. But yeah, when you spend a lot of your time in a similar situation with people where you know all the same things, you're doing the same job, it gets very easy to have those people become your friends. Once you leave that job or your lives are no longer able to overlap in that Venn diagram way that can happen as adults,
Ooh, that's a
it,
good
it
one.
gets awkward as fuck to try to find friends. Because now you went from having a community and possibly having friends to now I have to make an effort to keep this going.
I love that example. That paints such a great visual. If you guys don't know what a Venn diagram is, it's where you have the two circles that overlap, and then on the outer ends you have things that are different, and then in the overlapped areas you have we've been using commonality in this episode, so you would have the commonalities in there. That's a great visual representation to kind of show how deep is your friendship. How big are the circles when they overlap?
Olympic rings or tiny puddles or those people that like to look for the Mickey heads in all of the Disney
Or a
movies.
full blown solar eclipse.
Yeah, something's been happening this week with that. But yeah, like I think as you get to be an adult, it's a little bit harder to go up to the kid that you push twice on the swings and say, "Will you be my best friend?" One, it comes off as a little needy, which I think is woefully unfair because a lot of adults are lonely. We just don't get that same amount of flexibility and permission to be vulnerable in the same way that your little 4-year-old playground self is.
That's
I
true.
think it'd be hard to make friends.
A lot of people talk about
Especially,
this in terms of dating, but this is very true in just making friends.
yeah, like I know several people, myself included, have dated people that you were friends with just because you're like, oh well,
You're here.
yeah.
The hard
There's
part's
less
over.
of
You're
a
in my life.
yeah. The Venn diagram has come together just a little bit more. Uh, but yeah, like it's just so hard. Like you don't have time. You're tired. You barely showered once this week or at all. I don't know your lives. You're eating
You might be
microwave
projecting.
dinners. No, or one of those people that has like the Hello Fresh box. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna pour myself a nice glass of Pinot and sit on the couch with my cats.
Drag me.
Um, no, you like red. I wasn't being specific.
You,
But yeah, it's like, where does one find the time and energy to maintain friendships? And is that worth more than community? I think having a community is a lot less work.
well, I agree, but I also think that the responsibilities of quote maintaining friendship and your space in a community has also been unrealistically elevated by pop culture media.
The squad.
Hell yeah, it's like, oh, me and my girls, we just go out to the Bahamas once every month. Screw you, nobody does that.
Yeah.
And you do, and you're in a different tax bracket. You're not working. You don't get it.
When I hear squad, I always think of the Droogs from the Clockwork Orange movie or
You
the
would.
gangs from the Warriors. I'm like, I don't immediately go to Taylor Swift and all her besties. No
It's
shade
like
to Taylor, but
it's like squad goals.
yeah, no, I don't want to go to Instagram where you spend 5 minutes taking pictures of your food to show the other people that weren't invited to go with you. Um,
Wow, drag Mario.
I just think there's some sort of false veneer on
Oh,
being friends
totally,
these days.
totally.
Uh, like Bridesmaids is a great example. It's like, oh, here's this one lady. It's like we've been best friends. Who are all these other bitches? Like, how do they know you? Like I know you. And then there's a sense of competition. Um, and like Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. I'm just full of references right now.
You really are.
Um, it's like
I would
okay,
ask if
how
you
many
were. I
people?
would ask if you were looking at my DVD collection. She's in my living room right now. I was asking if you were looking at my DVD collection, but I don't have those movies.
No, it's just the human IMDb brain that is me. I want to make sure that I could find an example that hits on something that people know. I don't know, the Goonies. Yeah, like how many friends do you need to have in a group? And I guess one of the things is how do you know when you can trust someone with vulnerable information?
Oh, that's a big
You
one.
and I are awesome at, we've had years, but we are both the same type of person, as in we don't need to say, hey, between you, me, and the four walls. It's just understood
Yeah.
that unless there's express permission to share something about the other person, then either names are going to be changed for anonymity or we're just not going to be messy bitches and we're just not going to talk to it about it with other people.
We're even at such a point where I actually use you as a caveat for people. Whenever anybody else in my life comes to me and says, "Hey, can I tell you something if you keep it between us?" I'm like, I'm telling 5 other people, just so you know. I don't mean that in like a gossipy way, but I mean you have not. And here's how I say this is not gossipy. There's very little that happens that's exciting in my day. So if you decide to become an exciting or interesting thing in my day, then I get to share that with the people that are closest to me. Now, I'll tell you, it's my mother, it's my husband, it's my 3 best friends. Chances are you don't interact with any of them. So it's not, and I won't say your name, but I will say like the situation. So that's my caveat because you guys are my best friends. I will tell you everything about my day, even when you will not believe this one person came out of pocket. Let me tell you the situation. I'm going to protect the innocent, sure, but you're gonna know.
Yeah, and I think friendship and having a spouse or significant other, they kind of ride in the same vehicle for a little bit. So although I'm not consensually non-monogamous, I've always been one of those people that has thought it's a lot to put on a person to say, I'm going to marry you, commit to you, have some sort of public ceremony and legal, consequences. And I'm expecting you to meet absolutely all of my needs. We're going to dress the same. We're going to go on vacation together. We're always going to have meals together. That's one a lot for someone like me. But also, there's facets of my personality that are not going to be satisfied because the other person doesn't want to go to a Cindy Sherman show at an art museum or a 2-hour JD Salinger documentary.
Not
It's like,
just
that's what
them.
friends are for. Not just them.
Not just them.
Yes.
Thanks for not calling me on that. But
Yeah, see, I know which friend to take for which. It's like knowing what purse to take out.
yeah,
I carry a wallet, by the way.
and that's like
It's like, oh,
diversifying your friendships. It's diversifying your communities.
yeah, you have access to more things because the friend that went with me actually had a membership to that art museum, so we got perks, and I still got to do something that I wanted to do, and she got to do something she wanted to do, and you make time for that. But that trust is built over, I think, having those innocuous conversations and not being afraid to be honest. I'm always going to come 100% as myself. There may be times when I'm like, okay, that person's not ready for that, or this isn't the proper situation for me to disclose X, Y, Z. There's a set and a setting, but you got to kind of shoot your shot a little bit. And if someone's like, oh, that's weird, well, I would much rather save that than have a sham friendship or have a more shallow friendship. Like, not everybody needs to be swimming in the deep end with you. But
Well, I'm
even
glad you.
those shallow friendships are a lot to maintain sometimes if you're not being yourself.
Well, I'm glad you said that because I've been meaning to talk to you for 18 years now, and I think it's time. No,
I think of,
but you know what does kind of suck though? It's that when you decide that a community is no longer for you, suddenly you realize that maybe you hadn't fostered friendships, and that can be a little disheartening. I'm gonna throw out my own anecdote here. When I was wrestling back in when did I start? I think I started 2016, and I wrestled for like 4 years before the pandemic hit, and then the pandemic hit, and everything went to hell. There were a few personal fallouts, and this is where kind of getting a reality check in communities is thing. In some communities, it's very time consuming. I'm actually probably going to remove time consuming from my vocabulary, and I'm going to start saying it's very life consuming.
yeah.
It is very, very life consuming because you are giving away a lot of your life to invest in it. And I picked communities that required a lot of physical attention. It was dance, it was wrestling, and everything like that. But then when I left wrestling, for what I said was justifiable reasons, I just didn't want to work for sex offenders anymore. And that's something that everybody can say, but in no other industry did I realize I was working for so many. And that was like a big emotional shock to me. But when I left, I had like maybe 2 people out of the dozens and dozens that I've either helped trained, wrestled with, been to shows with, traveled with, and everything. Like, I don't really check in or get checked up on by them. I think maybe 3 people, 2 of them were fans, have actually like checked up on me, and the rest like people that I spent years with. And I will completely take responsibility for my end of that there were some social demands of the community that I was not going to adhere to. There were things like, a show wraps up at about 11:30 at night, and then we're going to put everything away. Then everybody's going to go out to dinner, and I'm like, I'm in my 30s. I have a husband at home who's waiting on me. I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not going to go do it. That is a waste of life for me. It has nothing to do with the people that were there. It's not that I didn't like them. It was that I had priorities at home.
I think you just didn't need to belong in that way.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that about myself as well as my friend circle. I've had the same, I would say, 10 core friends for probably the last 15 years, and other people flow in and out. But for me, keeping and maintaining friendships depends on the level of lift. Think about it like a seesaw. If things are even, nobody's going up or down, but you're also maybe not always having a good time. And not saying that one person has to be doing more. Like, for instance, if you're inviting the friend to go out and you're always the one that's paying, or the friend calls you and it's more of like an emotional dumping because they really may not have other avenues to release that, then you have to decide whether or not that's for you. Also, as your personal identifiers or things that you're into change, that sense of belonging that you needed or felt from this one thing, you may have evolved beyond that need. So, I'll use a personal example. I'm a Jew, and I'm a Jew by choice. I don't like the word convert. And at first, what drew me to it was, more of a sense of belonging, among many other things, but just boiling it down. And as I've gotten older and spent more time in the community, I think that sense of belonging and being able to identify is a little bit less important to me. I'm still getting my needs met, but the original reason why I went into it is no longer the reason that I stay. Not that it's, a bad or a negative thing, just using that as an example. Um, but I think, the what is the value? What are you putting in and what are you getting out? The return on investment. I think that can be used across anything in your life. Am I getting out of this what I'm putting into it? Within realistic expectations, though. Like, you can't expect someone who has a kid or a varied life, like, Byron, like, you get out of those things sometimes at like 1 o'clock in the morning and everybody's standing in a circle. IHOP? No, bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, and sometimes that just becomes untenable. If the best conversations and the best bonding happen over, a plate of pancakes at Denny's or IHOP and you're not there for it, well, how can you maintain your um, tie to that community? And do you want to? And how much of yourself and your lifestyle are you willing to change to maintain your part in it?
See, that's a big one. It's if you guys are finding your community, try to find one that's actually like cohesive with your lifestyle, because otherwise there are going to be like if you find yourself just kind of sitting around and there's something that you've always wanted to do and you realize that you have the time to do it, go do it. But if it's one of those things where again, decide how important it is. If it's going to like completely overhaul the harmoniousness that you have. You know what? Okay, this is actually kind of a good point. Some people will go try something new and, try to find something to fulfill their lives primarily because they're bored. Um, unless it's something that they are like genuinely passionate about. But like that's why you see, God help me, people like me who like flit from big thing to big thing to big thing to big thing. It's because yeah, for the most part, I do get bored, and I think that there's something, but I think it's a creative itch that I'm lacking that I have to have scratched. I have to
Yeah,
have an
we're
outlet. I have to have an outlet. I have to do something, or else I'm just going to be punching walls left and right. Um, God, maybe I do need therapy and not a podcast.
or like me, like I'll start lots of small projects. Like I have a lot of like the jack of all trades, master of none. I'm that person. So you really want me on your Jeopardy team. You really want me on your bar trivia because I've just tried so many things and gone down so many different rabbit holes. I'm like, you know what? I realize that paint by numbers have had only the ones colored in for several weeks now. I'm not coming back to that. Or, hey, I started this scarf, I think it was a couple months ago. Yeah, I'm not finishing that. So I'm a little less committal than Byron is, but
It
yourself
took a
better than
lot to get
anyone
her
else.
to just commit to this. All I asked her was for an hour a week, and man, the rescheduling.
Yeah, well, we
I'm
got other
I'm
things to
halfway
juggle.
kidding.
Half of half, but I think the example that came to mind when you were talking about jumping in with both feet or flitting from big thing to big thing. It's like friendships can be like a neighborhood with an HOA. You can have the friendship in a neighborhood without an HOA, but are you adhering to the same levels of, decorum? Are the rules for talking about something or not talking about something in the relationship? Are you both paying the same, fee for that? Or are you just having really well manicured lawns, but shitty stucco on the inside, and all of the houses look the same and nothing feels original? Um, it's it can be both. Like I don't want to drag the pageant scene, but that's what I felt when I've never been in a pageant. I think I've
I
been
don't
in
want to drag
one.
him, but fuck him.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't
are
want to
you
mince
looking
my
for
words. It's a
someone
little bit shit, and
like you do? Yeah, like how much are you compromising yourself? Are you willing to compromise? And not a compromise that goes against your morals. I'm not saying, oh, I really want to join a cult that talks about baby eating. That was a really odd example,
where
but
the hell did you go for that year we didn't talk?
no idea. Grasping at straws here. Says, hey,
Or let me pick one that's kind of happening right now. Or like the people that consider themselves part of the red pill community. You guys aren't really a community. You do have a shared sense of ideals and everything, but I swear to God, if you guys are having secret meetings and everything, y'all are the ones that need therapy.
yeah, I think that's yeah, they're extreme for multiple reasons, but are you having to give up who you fundamentally are to be part of a community or to be friends with someone? If so, I highly implore that for the sake of your health and others,
To
that you
not.
keep looking. Yeah, just don't. Just opt all the way out of that. Um, I think this would be a good time to plug our phone number. So if you're listening to this and want to weigh in, feel free to call us at 972-836-6275. I'm under
Hotline is
40,
always
so I
open.
won't repeat the
I
number.
hate you. You can also email us at thenightstandpodcast.com. We do check it whenever we feel like it. We do check it before we actually do our show. So if you do have a topic that you want discussed, we are more than happy to do it. We'd like to invite you on to chat with us as well. Tell us a little bit about your communities.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. We can only speak to our personal experiences because we are only the experts of being ourselves. And even then, as you heard from my baby eating comment, not the best at that all of the time.
We're 4 episodes in. You're going to get us canceled. I love it.
No, I think that comes from high school. I transferred to a very rural and homogenous high school, which is where Byron and I ultimately ended up meeting each other. But as I mentioned, I'm a black chick, and I came from an upbringing that was a lot more varied. And there was a church on every corner in our high school, and it was like church was its own religion. Like people really wanted to convert you because they thought, oh, you're new to a community. Surely you need friends and a community. And I love Halloween, one of my favorite holidays. It is a religious holiday for people, so I won't call it non secular. But there's a lot of those, hey, we're not really having a Halloween, but we're having a Halloween carnival where we're ostensibly doing everything
Just
but
say you're
calling
a
it
church.
Halloween. Yeah, basically. And I got so tired of it because people just would not let me be. And so one girl gave me the flyer and I took it and I said, oh, what time is it? And she like points, oh, it's 7 o'clock on this. I said, so it's on Halloween? She's like, yeah, but it's not for Halloween. I said, oh,
Then what's the point?
how how soon do I have to RSVP? And she's like, well, why? She thought it was like, not having a ride or
Just
something
pray
because
in
it's
your
high school.
attendance.
Yeah. And so I said, oh, well, I'm really waiting on the nuns from the orphanage to call me
I
back
hate you.
because you know how we sacrifice a baby to the Dark
I
Lord? I
hate you
just
so
wanted to make
much.
sure that, I wouldn't lose my spot. And that girl never talked to me
You're
again.
such a goater.
I was just over it. I just said the most hyperbolous thing to get her to leave me alone. I feel bad if that was you and you're listening. I'm only half sorry, but I also don't go to
I
the
am
church.
completely not sorry because honestly, it shouldn't take hyperbole for you to get the message.
Yeah, and maybe that's a good one. We've got a couple minutes left before we wrap up. How do you politely tell someone no that you don't want to be friends with them? I think in this age of social media, just leaving people on red or ghosting people is
Um,
just it went from being rude to common, and I have feelings about that.
I feel like you're asking me because I have the most experience with this, but well, here's my thing. I think that there comes a time and there comes an age. Okay, so there's an age for people, and there's a time in the relationship where one, you just kind of get it. Um, but for those that don't, I'm a fan of kind of getting a tight grasp on your own emotional vocabulary. So if you can actually tell somebody, look, I think that there's just a disconnect here, and I don't really have the time, energy, or desire to foster it, then we just move on. Some people do need to be blunt, and I've had to tell people in the past, like, I think you wanted me to be your friend, but you didn't understand what it was to be mine. Because a lot of people are going to know, like, love, and be friends the way they know, like, and love and need to be friended.
That's true.
And it's not understanding I personally, I blame the love languages because everyone is so good at identifying their own love languages, they neglect having to learn how to speak all five.
Or knowing what their attachment style is, which is totally
Yes.
different.
Yes, for those of you that try to get like super clinical and become armchair psychologists with your own vocabulary and your friends, you really do need to actually do your homework and realize that it's not, after a while you're not communicating to your friends, you're trying to convince them of a perspective, and
Yeah.
you're trying to just get your feelings validated without ever really listening to other people's. um, there's people that find community in that too. I mean, hell, look at the political communities. Everybody just finds a lot of grievances that they tend to gravitate towards.
You hate the same things I hate. Let's be friends.
Basically, and that's been a big change, at least in our generation. I remember a political climate where we were, one side or the other because we were in favor of this and this, and then in the last 10 years or so, it's been, oh, it's because I don't want this or because I hate this. Like, there's less of a progressive policy movement amongst the non-political people than there has been ever, and it comes from a lot of misinformation. I think people get misinformed so much that they just kind of stop listening.
Yeah, and then you're all sitting around the rocking chairs at Cracker Barrel at 7 o'clock on Sunday morning, just being big fat bigots. Um,
And then you just grasp onto the common denominator and hold on tight.
and I think it bears repeating. Like, I am a person that, although I am introverted, I do have extroverted moments. I think that's called an ambivert. So I am a person that needs to sponge out and have absolutely no people in nature and have my cats around me. I also have times where I'm really feeling social and I want to get out and talk to other people and hear their perspective on things. I find that I have a three strike rule, but not in a negative way. That if we've, in natural conversation with one another, be it out and about or at work, have touched upon similar feelings or similar interests, I'll just ask the person, hey, I enjoy having this conversation with you. Would you like to hang out outside of work? Or, hey, can we exchange information and try to get together soon? And then kind of let that other person, it's like I'm leaving the bait in the water and it's up to you as to whether or not you're taking it. And is there some hope sometimes? Because I'm like, wow, this person's really cool. I want to be their friend. Yes. But I have no expectations after that. I just put it out there. And if anything comes of it, great. If it's hard to get together at the same time or it doesn't feel like the other person is making the same amount of effort, then I just have to let it go. But oftentimes, if you want to make something work and the other person's just as friend and to you, then there's ways to keep it going. Maybe you only see that person once a month or once every couple of months, and
I
that's all you need. That's fine. You don't have to have sleepovers at each other's houses every weekend.
Okay,
Um,
I have it here. Ambivert, the balance Pokemon. Um, she is right. It is ambivert is the proper term, and it's the balance of extrovert and introvert. Um, and it's one thing that
my Scrabble points.
double word score. Um, there is a value to really kind of understanding language in general, because I think a lot of people confuse being honest with being blunt with being callous. Um,
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, well, I just said, like, if you don't want to be friends with somebody and you just like say, I really just find you annoying and I think you should, just take that energy somewhere else. Everyone's like, well, I was just being honest. I was being as nice as possible. It's like, you didn't need to say, like, no, you weren't. No,
Yeah.
you weren't. You can just say, it's like, listen, like, I do my best to try to run the gamut whenever it comes to it. So I'll even just say, like, look, I think I don't have the energy to foster as much as you need. And that's kind of a boundary to say, maybe adjust your expectations, because sometimes the hard words are just hard. It is odd to go up to somebody and say, I think I need you to adjust your expectations for our friendship. But you can just say it. It kind of does have to get to a point where the other person gets fed up and they're like, hey, I feel like you're not, calling me as much. And then really you just have like one quick conversation to realize they're not the kind that calls people.
Yeah.
Like
It's like a soft boiled breakup.
I'm a caller. I call everybody. I call the same 5 people every day. but it's not to a point where I realize that like, oh well, I'm just gonna not call them for 2 weeks and see if they really care about me. No, it's because at this point I've conditioned them to know I'm available because I will call. You guys really roll a dice whenever you call me.
Where is he now?
I think
What's he
that's
doing?
fair. Like you don't know what I'm doing.
And I love the voicemail option. Or
Yes,
I wish calling cards would make a comeback. Like those seem neat. I'm also 90 years old on the inside, so
she
drag
is.
me for that. Um, but yeah, I think just to kind of wrap it up, there is a difference between community and friendship, and I wish the cats in the living room were better friends now. But one of our favorite Shakespeare
They are
quotes is,
better
"I
friends than
do."
they have been. You have to admit that.
Yeah, that's true. No one's hissing, at least not audibly. Sometimes, like I was saying, our favorite Shakespeare quote is, "I do wish we were better strangers."
Please take that
Sometimes
with you.
that just has to happen, and it's through no fault of your own. Sometimes you are simply incompatible with someone, but that doesn't mean that you're someone or your friend group isn't out there. It just means maybe they're waiting behind a hobby you haven't started yet, or maybe there's someone that is just as nervous and adult as you about saying, "Will you be my friend?" because it's not cute when you're 36 years old. I don't know why not. I think we should bring some of that back. That vulnerability from really being earnest and wanting someone to be your friend and having no qualms about you know,
Well,
letting that out there.
well, let me
Um,
let me kind of push back on that real quick, just to kind of bring ourselves into the modern era and why going back is going to be harder is because a lot of things are streamlined now, with the social media, and I'm even going to throw the dating apps in there. I was listening to a show where they were talking about the differences between, first of all, a lot of these shows, somebody will flip the script on you just to prove their point. So they were talking about approaching somebody in a bar, and then the host, actually flipped it to talking about approaching somebody on a dating app, which are two very, very, very different dynamics. Now, the thing about the dating apps and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everything is that you can basically carve out your community just by checking some boxes. You say, hey, this is my name, and you can follow me here, here, and here. You then take less than 300 characters to tell everybody what you're into, what you don't like, the food you like, your sexuality, your political preferences. You have the opportunity to do that, and then people can look at that and say, is this somebody I really want to get into their inbox on? And then they decide it there. So while it does kind of streamline everything, it also does take the old school vulnerability and the 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 social wherewithal and the confidence to actually approach somebody and get to know them. It's the getting to know people part that has been taken out of modern society.
yeah, and there's a certain level of practice. It's a skill like any other, and you hone it when you use it over and over again. Using Byron and myself as an example, we were in the same spaces for maybe 2 or 3 years before we found the thing that brought us together. Because ostensibly, on the surface, we don't have a lot that would look like we would be in common or that we would look like we have, a tribe or commonality with each other. But, it only took a few conversations of, we're the only ones in this group that got that joke. Or, hey, I'm also into that. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't an instant, oh my God, did we just become best friends? It was like, oh, okay, we filtered through other people and we were the ones standing and we're like, nah, we'll just make a go of it. And, 18 years later, it's like a How I Met Your Mother, but funny.
Ha!
Um,
Ha! Ha!
I'm sorry if you
Uh,
love that show, but I'm also not sorry.
Take that,
Um,
white people. No, I'm just kidding.
Misconstrued, I'm gonna get a lot of hateful DMs.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I'm an optimistic person, but I'm also tempered by reality. I'm like the optimistic, jaded person sometimes. So if you are looking for your community and you're looking for friends, please don't give up. There truly is someone that wants all the things that you think you hate about yourself, um, in a healthy way. So just I'd say keep trying. And the social media apps and the dating apps, it's like shopping your resume, and some people have other people write those for them. So just keep that in mind.
A resume is just a list of things you don't want to do again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or it could be like Lori Laughlin, where you're paying someone to get into the school of your choice, but doing zero work on
Oh,
yourself.
Lori, will you ever learn?
Oh, how? Well, we hope you have enjoyed this episode and you have comments and questions and things to say because we're still figuring this out,
We're kind of
just
building
like
our own community here, and we really want you guys to stay a part of it.
yeah, we are open to all types. There are caveats, but I can't list all of them now. But sometimes you don't know that line has
I
been
don't
crossed
know.
until you
Well, I
cross
don't
it.
know because you actually did take some of the getting to know you part out of it. You've announced your religion and your race, so you've kind of told people, like in a way, an introduction to an identifier is also kind of a boundary. It kind of lets people know what's appropriate and what's not.
Yeah, my boundaries are baby eaters. I'm sorry. Please don't at me if you eat babies. I can't help you. I don't want to be a part of that. I
Like,
don't have any
if you guys
sources for
actually
you.
knew us, you would not look to her as the one that would bring up baby eating and anything. Like, neither one of us would in normal conversation. There's nothing about our personalities that suggests it. But I would be the more likely one for like no reason at all. I don't know what she is on today. But thank you guys,
Nostalgia. Yes.
guys and girls, and in between. Thank you so much for joining us. We will catch you guys next time. And until then, we are the Nightstand. We are the thoughts that keep you up at night. I am Byron.
I am Zelda.
Go to sleep.